Well, hello everybody, and welcome to our well, what is it? It's our Wesak or our Taurus pre-full moon webinar, and Tuya and I are still right here in the hotel after 4.5 weeks. I think we've had a very successful third ray conference dealing with the abstract mind, all the way from the abstract mind to the practical working out of creativity upon the physical plane. And we're thinking forward to next year's fourth ray conference. I see it has nest years in it, but it's the name of the conference, and it'll be on the fourth ray, will be the new group of world servers leading humanity towards harmony, beauty, and truth. So, mark your calendars. It's right there at the end of April. We begin with a pre-conference, I think, on April the 28th. You'll get the exact data, but we have a 12.5-day conference, and we hope very much that you will be with us at that time. And the way it's planned right now, it will be at the right here in Chandler at the Crown Plaza San Marcos Resort, a very lovely place, I think, and we get a lot done. So I know it seems a little early to plan ahead this far. We will be also celebrating Wesak during the conference next year. And the new group of world servers is especially a fourth ray group, and the fourth ray is coming through Taurus. So many things are lining up. It's also, election year in the United States, and we'll have to be thinking very intensively about the preservation of the highest values. Well, okay. We may be a little bit, that's good. 131 some people signed up here, but I think we'll be okay. We don't want to have the overflow today. Well, here we see the contrast between the banner, which we prepare, I see, and when the eye is opened, all is illumined. And sometimes the Tibetan has written it in two ways. I see, and when the eye is opened, all is light. And of course, we're talking about the eye of Shiva, the blue eye, the third eye, the eye of synthesis. And what does it take to open that eye? A lot of discipline and the watching of the physical plane life quite closely, and the elevation of the energy so it doesn't get wasted along the way until it begins to really stimulate the pineal gland. Then the eye will begin to open. The light in the head begin to shine forth, and the light nature of all form will be revealed. The Kabbalah tells us that the entire universe is light, and the way we can look at it now is it's a metaphysical way, a kind of condensation of the great light. So we begin to see the light value of all things, and that's what we're looking for as we move towards the Taurus Wesak Festival. It will be on Saturday the 18th at PM time in GMT 9, the exact full moon, that is 9:11 and 14 seconds PM, which out here in Arizona and on the West Coast is going to be 2:11 and 14. So we'll be skipping one day as Tuya and I travel to California, and then we'll set up there and be broadcasting for you. And that broadcast will be on our usual YouTube channel. And I put that in there in the chat box. You have it, I'm sure, but and that starts at 7:30 p.m. GMT, and then we have another, hour and 40 minutes or something until the actual moment of the full moon. So this is really the high point of the spiritual year, the time when we receive the greatest stimulation from Shambhala, and the forces of enlightenment are widely spread abroad. And the great Shambhalic light can come through for all of us in varying degrees of intensity, depending upon how we prepare. This, the Jafra illustration is rather Venusian in a certain way. It does feature the light. It does show us the white and purified bull, which is the entire lower nature, which has been purified by the great light. Mars is a little bit resting on his shield, as it were, in detriment in the sign Taurus, because, well, there's plenty to fight about in Taurus, but it's more through the agency of the will. I think the priestess is back there from the tarot, and it has to do with the rendering sanctified of matter. And it is not the Vulcanian view of Taurus, which begins to happen esoterically and hierarchically, involving a great will to bring the will of the soul and the will of even higher agencies right down into the lower 18 or 21 subplanes coming from the previous solar system, so they can be redeemed and brought in line with the theme of this second major solar system. So all of us, there's harmony here, there's beauty here, there's art, there's all of the factors of Venus, the fifth ray of Venus and the first ray of Vulcan. All of these planets, just like a human being, have different rays, as well as the ray that we may be most familiar with. But if you study carefully and look at the references and use your power of enlightened inference, there's all kinds of inferences, of course, but they will lead us to the estimation of the other and maybe even higher rays of the planets. We mostly deal with the soul ray of sacred planets and with the personality ray of the non-sacred planets. The Earth is very much connected with this sign Taurus, as is Shambhala, that great center of unfettered enlightenment. The light is blazing out and is going to educate and illumine humanity. And all of this coming from Taurus, the mother of illumination. Just the way the Christ has a name for each one of the signs of the zodiac, so even more so this must be true of Sanat Kumara, who is he is the Lord of the world and the emanation of our planetary logos and a disciple of our great solar logos. So when we see the banner here, I see, and when the eye is opened, all is illumined, or all is light. We see the normal rulership is Venus, a great fifth ray planet, but with lots of second and sixth ray behind it, and Vulcan, the esoteric ruler, and also the hierarchical ruler for initiates. Vulcan has the ability to produce somehow, or bring forth, or bring out of latency the light that is concealed by the non-sacred planets such as Mars. And let's just say that Vulcan always has to win in the contest with Mars. Abel, well, the old saying is Cain kills Abel. Vulcan kills Abel the shepherd under Aries, which means that the sacred will overcomes desire. We have to look in the allegories for the real meaning of these things. On the Moria Federation website, you'll have everything that Francis Donald has written, written and also illustrated. And let's see what we have here. This is one of the really magnificent kind of drawing that he has brought forth, the painting. I don't know what to call it when you put it on the, put it through the computer, but anyway, computer art. And in the mountains there, in the high Himalayas, and with the symbolic members of the hierarchy before it, and the great lords are there. Of course, this is a symbolic representation, but the Buddha at great sacrifice, we are told, for 8 minutes a day, a year rather, comes forth and brings the blessing of Shambhala to the hierarchy and to humanity. And maybe this other, this is strictly symbolic. Of course, the Buddha appears, we're told, as a massive figure coming, I think, somewhat from the north, passing Mount Kailash and hovering over a great rock and so forth, to perform that blessing. It apparently is a great reality. It will be like Good Friday. The Wesak Festival, interestingly, will eventually be fading out, and I think the new group of world servers will be the ones that will take the place at the time of the Wesak, take the place of the Buddha. And only he knows the time when his particular contact, which has been going on for centuries, his particular contact with humanity will be concluded. And the future great festivals, he tells us, for the New Age will be more Easter, the resurrection, and Pentecost, the fiery tongues of flame, bringing the second initiation to those members of humanity who can withstand that particular type of pressure. So Easter and the Pentecost will take the place of the Wesak Festival and of Good Friday. Yes, okay, and here is let's see if I can find this one. Here is another representation. Now, some of us were there in the year 2000, and many have gone since. You know, they've tightened up all the restrictions on this particular place of pilgrimage, but this also has to be considered to be symbolic, because the three great lords are sort of before the great rock, but they'd each of them have to be about 50 feet tall if this was a literal representation of the actual etheric ceremony. But suffice it to say, there is the hierarchy, and they will be upon this rock, which is very, very big and very long, and of course the people would be much smaller. But we were there at the exact moment of Wesak in the year 2000, the year of the Shambhala impact. And I must say that, as far as I understand, the Tibetan does use tropical astrology when he offers the time that the Wesak and other festivals occur. Some people think that it should be sidereal, and in the East, there are certain calendars that bring many, many pilgrims into this valley according to the sidereal timing. But as far as we know, it is really the esoteric approach through tropical astrology. Suffice it to say, this is the high point of inspiration for the spiritual year, and the Christ and the Buddha conduct this festival for the hierarchy and humanity just the way they do the festival of goodwill, the Christ festival, the festival of humanity, whatever you want to call it, Asala, at the time of tropical Gemini. So in our interior life, you know, we can, I think, receive a very potent stimulation along the lines of light and will, if we will prepare properly. And we still have 2 more days to do that. Some of us have been so tied up with the conference, you know, which has emphasized the spiritual triad and the great third aspect of divinity, that now we have a chance to begin really thinking about Wesak. But we did have a Wesak new moon, sort of a Taurus new moon, little celebration here and meditation at the conference. And next year it will be actually the full Wesak meditation. So I think you get the idea. Let's go in deeply at a very special time to tune in with the forces of enlightenment And in another 2 days on Saturday, excuse me, it will be on Saturday at 7:30 GMT PM. It'll be the evening in London, and it'll be GMT 7:30. We will begin our actual full moon exact moment broadcast for the Wesak. I think we're very fortunate to be living in a time when such knowledge is broadcast widely across the world, and there can be a crescendo leading to a climax of enlightenment for many millions of people. And maybe we can step over that boundary that separates the fourth kingdom of nature from the fifth kingdom of souls. It will be possible for many, and every time you take that first initiation, you have placed your foot within the kingdom of souls. Now, Francis has extracted something here with quotes from DK, which I think is it's good to review. This month's image puts us high above a Himalayan valley. We're actually in the valley, 15,000 feet really and more. And then if you go around Kailash, almost 19,000 feet, it's quite a task. At the time of the great Taurian Wesak Festival, it says below, we can just make out members of the hierarchy as they solemnly weave their geometrical patterns with measured pace and chant their mantrams, a number of them, in preparation for the great event. And at the moment the full moon approaches. Now, it's a little bit up in the air. Does he start 4 minutes before the full moon, or does he begin to appear at the exact full moon? In any case, one of the two. The Buddha appears at the upper end of the valley and moves to take place above them. He is shown here drawing cosmic energy through his aura into the vortex that links him to humanity. And DK tells us, okay, so let's just take a look once again at these images. And of course, there is this immense figure of the Buddha. His appearance is a great sacrifice to himself and a tremendous stimulation for hierarchy and for humanity. Okay, so DK tells us that during the Wesak Festival, kept so universally in India to this day, the hierarchy forms itself into a channel for the transmission of power and blessing from the levels on which the Buddha may be found. Where can the Buddha be found? He's a becoming seventh degree initiate, just the way the Christ is. They seem to pass through their initiations within a few centuries of each other, and the next one will be the conclusion of the seventh initiation, which will be taking place towards the end of the age of Aquarius, and they will each pass on to greater and more powerful work. So their ability to focus on the logoic plane within the sea of fire on the highest level of the cosmic physical plane, that is their highest home at the moment. The Buddha being a resident of Shambhala and Christ having full access to it at any time. So, okay, let's see, no more. I guess we've reached the maximum. We've reached the maximum. And I regret that, I regret that this has happened, but okay. Every Wesak, it seems to be that way, and the webinar has reached its maximum. Okay, that's just how it is at the moment. So anyway, on that high level, both the Buddha and the Christ may be found in their highest consciousness. The Buddha, he acts as a focal point for that power, and passing it through his aura, pours it out over mankind by means of the channel provided by the assembled lords, masters, graded initiates, and disciples. This is the Tibetan speaking. This channel is formed by the use of sound and rhythm simultaneously employed. By the chanting of a certain mantram, by means of the slow, measured movement that accompanies that chanting, the funnel is formed that reaches upward to the desired locality. The geometrical figures formed in the matter of the plane higher than the physical, which are the result of geometrical movement of the concourse gathered in that Himalayan center, form themselves into wonderful avenues of approach to the center of blessing for the inhabitants, Deva or otherwise, from any particular plane. So it's a great spiritual event, and we human beings, I think, can only witness a very small part of what is really going on spiritually on the cosmic physical plane, especially the higher aspects of it. For those who can clairvoyantly view the scene, the beauty of the geometrical forms is unbelievable, and that beauty is enhanced by the radiant auras of the great ones who are gathered there. So this is Letters on Occult Meditation, an early book, one of his first, page 198, written maybe 100 years ago. Onward. At the time of this Wesak Festival, I would call your attention to the fact that the annual return of the Buddha to bless his people everywhere and to convey the message of wisdom, light, and love to humanity, coming as he does from the very heart of deity. This is interesting, Shambhala, in a certain sense, is a kind of a heart center, with the number 12 being very important, and Pisces being very important. So the monadic and logoic planes, yes, okay. Well, okay, I think I'm just going to ask that unfortunate little message not be broadcast any further. Unfortunately, we're over our limit. Okay, year by year, and is outer evidence and guarantee of the inner divine guidance and revelation in this present world cycle of 2,500 years. That is the bodhisattvic cycle. A bodhisattva usually reigns for some 2,500 years, and the Christ himself has chosen to reign for 5,000 years, which is akin to the second ray, the 5,500, 5,000 year cycles are all on the second ray. Year by year, he returns. For a brief minute, well, maybe a moment, he reminds us that God exists and ever loves, that he, that is God, is not unmindful of his people, that the heart of the universe is unalterable compassion, and that man is not alone. To bring this recognition about and to make this appearance possible, a living triangle of energy is created and focused through three great spiritual individuals who evoke recognition both in the East and the West, and they are known to believers in every faith and all nationalities. The Lord of the world, that is the Ancient of Days, Sanat Kumara, the planetary logos, or an emanation of him along the second ray, first ray line, Melchizedek, he to whom Christ referred when he said, I and my Father are one. Then the Buddha, the illumined one, the revealer of the light and the wisdom which come to us from sources far greater than our planetary life, the messenger of the gods. He's very much Mercury, the messenger, the Christ, then the Son of the Father, the world Savior, the Redeemer, he who has remained with us and is gathering his sheep into his fold, the Lord of love. And he is very much a representative of Venus. I wonder if we have kind of a Vulcan, Mercury, Venus triangle there. In these three, whose nature is radiant love and light, humanity can grasp in some measure the nature of divinity. They are greater than is known or realized. Human intelligence and aspiration can only sense their essential nature. Their spiritual potency has to be stepped down if mankind is to bear the pressure of the impact of that energy, of the energy they wield and seek to transmit. It is this stepping down process which takes place at the time of the May full moon, and it is brought to a, quote, focus of transmission, close quote, by the massed intent of the hierarchy and the massed demand of the world aspirants and disciples, itself drawn forth by the massed need of the people of all lands. So in a way, the Wesak transmission is a great response to an urgent need of humanity and the planet Earth. So here, my brothers, is a simple statement of the facts which must be grasped by all of you who seek to participate intelligently in the Wesak Festival and who are anxious to act as transmitters of the spiritual energy which will at that time be poured out to suffering humanity. And this is from Externalization of the Hierarchy, page 286 and 288, and Francis brings it to us with his highest regards. Okay, so that's a beautiful idea of what is again being prepared. At least we act as if it is again being prepared. There may be a transition in process, and we don't know the time when the Buddha will actually discontinue bringing this blessing from Shambhala, but we can be sure that if he does discontinue, there will be a sufficient energy to carry on the tradition and bring the forces of enlightenment to humanity, which so badly needs it at this time of rampant glamour, illusion, and Maya. Okay, friends, I think that's enough background. You know all about it. You've been thinking about it. You're building towards it. I see, and when the eye is opened, all is illumined. So perhaps we can find the way during these next few days to come into awareness of a more lighted world, a more lighted humanity than heretofore, and help spread that great light, which will eradicate those enemies of a greater consciousness, Maya, glamour, and illusion. Okay. I see it's already taking place up here on the rock, The rock, though, is very, very big. And so this has to be considered to be symbolic and not in proportion. But you can get the idea of the hierarchy assembled, and lower in the valley, a bit lower in the valley, the many, many people, some of whom can see what's going on, and some of whom know what's going on, and others have to just take it by faith. All right. So. Here's our meditation. And let's use this as a jumping off point for preparation for the actual full moon this coming Saturday. At least it will be, Saturday in the western part of the world, and later in the Far East, it actually will be probably Sunday, almost. Yeah, it will be Sunday, and in Australia and New Zealand. So we're in these days of preparation, where actually he asked us to build up the physical etheric attitude of confidence, then followed by aspiration. We're on that day. Actually, interestingly, the Taurus itself carries the highest form of aspiration. There's a direct quote about that, and it's even surprising. You might think that a different sign of the zodiac would carry that high level of aspiration, but in fact, Taurus carries this highest version of idealistic aspiration. Then the day immediately before the full moon, dedication, and of the full moon, safeguarding, and there's so many things from which we have to safeguard the energy so we can hold it intact and at its greatest concentration. And then come our days of distribution. Many members of humanity not being tuned in with the spiritual possibilities may find these days somewhat discordant because they involve the opposition between two fourth ray signs or constellations, namely Taurus and Scorpio, and there can be a lot of conflict. But okay, when we enter the esoteric field, we are learning how to resolve that conflict and lift the potentialities into the Buddhic sphere from which a great enlightenment can come. Next year at the conference, of course, our emphasis will be very much upon Buddhi, upon pure reason, upon intuition, upon all that the new group of world servers can use to lead humanity into greater consciousness. Now, let's meditate. So we begin by withdrawing the consciousness of the soul in incarnation away from the personality vehicles. First, well, basically we recognize the instrumentation of these vehicles. They are instruments, is what they are. So away from the etheric physical, we move inward. And away from the astral vehicle with its likes and dislikes, its attractions and repulsions, its desires. We stand apart from it, as it were, in our immersed soul consciousness. And away from the lower mind with all its many thoughts. We're interested in quieting all of that personality nature in favor of something more meditative, something more contemplative. And it is as if we slip in our consciousness into a state which is, at least imaginatively, within the higher three subplanes of the mental plane, into a world of light, which is the realm of the soul within the causal body, within the egoic lotus. Just take a moment and imagine that. So it is as if we are in the presence of higher energies, and something of the light of the soul, the love of the soul, the sacrificial will of the soul, the synthetic grasp of unity of the soul, and this great extension of the monad we call the jewel in the lotus, with its potent beingness, its will. All of these are our imaginative present internal environment. And we realize our soul relation, first of all, to the men and women of goodwill all over the world, soul to soul. And if it's personality relation, it's the soul infused personality, partially infused anyway. We relate in that way. And we relate to the members of the new group of world servers, more intensely applied to service. It's been around for 100 years or so, maybe a little less, but I call it the new group of world servers because that's what the Tibetan calls it. And when you look at the 20 million years, 21 million years in which humanity has been on this planet as an individualized kingdom, at least with individualized members, it's new. The new group of world servers of the past 100 years, that's a very new development. And really, just for a moment, just think, there are billions of human beings on this planet or within the inner vibratory levels of this planet, in the body or out of the body. So really, as souls, finally, we are somehow unified with all of them. There may be soul groupings and those specialized groupings according to ray and astrological factors, but ultimately, humanity is one. Naught is but me, the great second ray mantram. And if I could bring that particular mantram into reality in our consciousness, a really big step would be taken. Naught is but me. There is the one, then there is a unity within the one, and then there are many apparently discrete individuals and beings within that unity. Every day, perhaps, and especially at Wesak, when the Shambhala energy has a chance of getting through more impressively, we should recognize those factors of oneness and unity. Now, if we wish to touch the higher vibratory levels, the Antakarana is our inner organ, the inner instrument by which we do that. The sevenfold bridge of light, the rainbow bridge, we can visualize extending from the astral area particularly and upward through the mental plane and upward into the spiritual triad, and really finally, well, not finally at all, but for man at least, finally upward to the spirit itself. the relatively unveiled spirit within the monadic vehicle and beyond. This Antikarana, it goes to different planets and stars and constellations and galaxies, and it just doesn't end until we reach that from which we have come forth. So the Antikarana finally, and who knows how many trillions, quadrillions, of Earth years, figures beyond that, it will take before the returning Antikarana, really retracing the steps of emanation, reaches what we can symbolically call the height of the universe. But for now, it's enough to just consider this rainbow bridge, and it will pass through an area of the lower mental plane where energies have been gathered. From where have they been gathered? From the love petals, the knowledge petals, and the petals, and the sacrifice petals of the egoic lotus, brought into the area around the mental unit, from the synthesis petals, even from the jewel in the lotus, even energies of the soul, creating a more soul-infused state, have been retained in a kind of pool of energy around the mental unit to prepare for projection. And the visualized Antikarana is going to pass through those energies, but that's our launching pad. And normally you would do this on the basis of the color of your soul ray and personality ray, which you can imagine if you wish, but the main color is indigo blue. And the main mantra is, I see the greatest light, leading us all the way, at least imaginatively, upward into the unfettered enlightenment of Shambhala. So although it's not really possible for us yet in our present condition to reach even the first two subplanes of the Buddhic and Atmic planes, because they are beyond the state of a master, and it is impossible for us to really reach into the monad, though we can receive its energy, we will still imagine that this can happen and that we will be met by streams of energy coming forth from these high places. So the rising projector, using a word of power, is met by an evocative response from the very highest levels. So we say the word of power for the second ray, I see the greatest light, and outwardly we sound one of the notes associated with the second ray of love wisdom, and associated with the light And so maybe some of the wisdom, some of the light coming from these higher areas of our energy system will descend into the group consciousness as we think about the sources of energy which are available at this time. We want to make these energies very, what can I say, we want to make them very, very real to us, if we possibly can. So the energies available now are of a very refined kind, but first we express our salutations with the elder brothers as given by Master Decay in some of his various meditations. Salutation first to the Buddha, then the Christ, then the Masters, and so forth, expressing that we will work with them in the fullest possible cooperation, as we understand that cooperation. We visualize as we do this as a group. Salutations to the Buddha, the Lord of Light, the Lord of Wisdom. Salutations to the Christ, the Master of all masters, and the teacher alike of angels and of men. Salutations with the triangle of masters with whom we work most closely. The Master M, KH and DK. Oh. Salutations to the Master Moria, the head of all esoteric schools and organizations. Oh. Oh. Salutations to the Master Kutumi, the coming Christ of the age of Capricorn, and the Chohan, whose initiates, whose ashram are most responsible for preparing for the reappearance of the Lord Maitreya. Oh. Salutations to the Master Jwalkul, the messenger of the masters who has given us the blue books and is training disciples for initiation. Oh. Salutations to your own master as you know him to be or conceive him to be. Oh. And it is our intention to work cooperatively according to the measure of light within us with these great sources. Salutations then to the entire spiritual hierarchy of our planet. Oh. And we think then together about Shambhala. The center where the will of God is known, located in the cosmic ethers, and identified as a group soul. And with all reverence and in all humility, we sound a very silent internal Om, imagining this group, all servers, all men and women of goodwill, pervaded by this Shambhala energy. And maybe it will be possible to live our individual and group life more under the will of God and purpose of God, the planetary logos, as much as we can understand that will, that purpose. Now, we proceed. We're going to imagine that we have gathered together not as extended personalities, but as points of tension, each one of us a point of tension. Focused, immovable will, that is the definition of a point of tension. And we gather together, all coming together as if in one point of tension. And that point of tension, imaginatively, it hovers over the golden pathway that we've been using, that Master DK has given to us. And that golden pathway leads into the indigo sun, where we will imagine we meet the consciousness of Master DK, who is a great expert in the matter of planetary, solar systemic, and extra-systemic cosmic energies. So together and in one point of revelatory, focused, immovable will, we feel the golden pathway growing shorter and shorter, shorter, until in our group point we find ourselves within the indigo sphere, the great color of the second ray of love wisdom. And it's our goal to be somewhat pervaded by the consciousness of Master DK as we come to terms with the energies now available. These are realities, they are now available. And over the next few days, we really have to hold that idea, not as some mental formulation, but as a reality of a present energy or present energies with which we can be imbued. And so imaginatively we travel into the presence of these very real energies, assisted by the comprehension, the deep understanding of Master DK. We're going to be raising our energies towards Venus, the exoteric ruler of Taurus, conveying increasing light and love from the soul. Always available, but somehow more insistently available at this time. and Vulcan. Not even yet really discovered as a photographic image, very close to the sun, but still, as he says, a physical planet, conveying the will of the soul, and even the will coming from the atmic plane of spiritual will. If we have some degree of this Vulcanian will, we can overcome the desires of the personality. So then visualize the planet Venus first. In relation to Taurus, it's the ruler of a number of constellations, but now we consider it in relation to Taurus. Conveying the beauteous light of the soul, the light of the solar angel, illuminating our consciousness with love and wisdom, and also with this intense fifth ray light, and stimulating our higher mind so that it can be more sensitively responsive to the intuition. The presence of Venus. And if this Venus energy flows into us individually and as a group, the light and love of the soul, the higher mind, the great love wisdom will increasingly be available to us. So we imagine that happening in viewing especially our groups with love and wisdom. I'm going to use a specifically indigo note. It will be an A. And we will imagine this Venusian energy, the energy really of the solar angel, the mediating factor, bringing Venus to us, flowing into all of our groups, and inevitably into our own consciousness. We want to be filled with this very real Venusian energy to which we are more sensitive at this time, We don't want to treat each other unless necessary with the non-sacred Martian energy, rather with the Venus energy, which must prevail at this time, especially over the cruder, ruder Martian energy. But now, somewhat equipped with this enhancing love, wisdom energy of monadic Venus and the intense luminosity of the fifth ray soul of Venus, reflecting Sirius, we go still closer to the sun, maybe into that blinding area where it's so difficult to make out, discover the intra-mercurial planets, and find the planet Vulcan, a hidden planet really, a very esoteric planet. And we'll ponder on Vulcan, first from the esoteric point of view. It's the will of the soul, the grip of the soul over the personality, bending the personality to its will. You feel in your life gripped by this will of the soul. The grip of the soul over Mars, and finally, at the third degree, defeating Mars, as will must defeat desire. And then to do the will of our soul, obey the inner impulses of the soul, we're told. The second of the four methods of achieving adeptship. Obey the inner impulses of the soul. Let's see ourselves individually and in our groups really obeying the grip of the soul and bringing out of the opaque substances of our lower nature a certain brilliance which really shines under the influence of Vulcan. I'll choose the note D. It's a solar note. It has much of the first ray in it. Spiritual will in our groups. how much more powerful and effective would they be? But Vulcan is also the hierarchical ruler and giving us Atma, the highest aspect of the spiritual triad, along with Saturn. And there is persistence with Vulcan. It keeps on, keeps on, keeps on in the quest for the greatest light, the will which produces illumination no matter what. How much do we love the light? The Tibetan would not have been as he is unless he loved the light for centuries, even thousands of years, and pursued it. So the will from our sacrifice petals, the will from the jewel and the lotus, the will from the atmic plane, and ultimately the will from the monad, as Vulcan is one of the planets substituting for the Christ, substituting for the great will that now impels the Christ forward, not only love, wisdom, but the Christ is a great monad of love, the second ray and the first ray will on the monadic plane. Vulcan is involved. So may our lives be filled with this greater will. You can feel it when it happens. This greater purpose and a greater light. May we be empowered. The light coming forth from Taurus. What is it? Think of it. The penetrating light of the path. This is a beam of light streaming forth from the point in Aries and revealing the area of light control. We are all treading the path, some of us with less light than should be shown upon the path, and we can have more. And we can penetrate the areas of darkness, the penetrating light of the path. Think of it. The will, the treading the path, the will to light, the will to illumination, the will to spread the great light in proportion to whomever we may meet. we try to open ourselves to the feel of the Taurian energy. It will only get more intense, more lighted over the next day or two, attempting to realize its profound relationship to the fourth ray of harmony through conflict, and thus to the fourth creative hierarchy, which is our hierarchy of human monads, and which Scorpio rules. Two great fourth ray constellations connected with humanity. Aided by the lesser gods, Venus, fifth ray, sixth ray, second ray, moving up from the soul. Vulcan proposed first ray, fourth ray, second ray, moving up from the soul. We start to become real representatives at this season of the will and the purpose of our deity. There are so many, but we're dealing now with the hierarchy and Sanat Kumara and our planetary logos, so we can really be part of the plan, and so that our energies as expressed are the plan. And this will all bring about an intensification of the forces of enlightenment, which will, for disciples, bring about the revelation of the plan and purpose of our planetary logos and the illumination of human consciousness. Remember how important a role we play on our planet. This is the base of the spine center of the solar logos, having to reach full activation so that the solar logos can take his fifth cosmic solar initiation. We have a big work before us. Now, our attention is now on the constellation Taurus, very powerful, which sends its energy to the sign Taurus, which is part of the zodiacal Davic sphere surrounding the Earth, and always beginning at the vernal equinox. And that sign specializes and distributes the constellational light. So let's think, as we prepare for the next several days, let's think together, what does it mean to us? We'll have some moments of silence, silent meditation, preparing for our meditation over these coming days, keeping this great mantra in mind. I see. And when the eye is opened, All is illumined. I see, and when the eye is opened, all is illumined. It's like being able to see all form as an externalization of lighted substance. All things come out of the great light, and all things in universe are, with universal essentiality, are the great light. I see. And when the eye is opened, all is illumined. Perhaps we can learn to determine the light value of every form we encounter. So over these next few days, let's really look for the light. And sensitive to the light, we can say to ourselves and mean it, in that light shall we see light, a greater light. Perhaps the light of mind will lead to the light of intuition. I see. And when the eye is opened, the eye of synthesis, the eye of unity, the blue eye, the Shiva eye, that eye is opened. All is light, all is illumined. The sound an Om after a little reflection. And we will prepare. We will prepare for the coming of the process, where the Christ is the intermediary, the elder brothers assisting with the invocation, and the Buddha truly to appear and bless the world. Now, remember, we are in the great body of a tremendous being, minuscule when compared to a galaxy, of course, but for us, tremendous. We call it the one about whom naught may be said, a supercosmic logos. It's our local being along those lines. There are 49 of them locally. And in this being, structured in some way, like a human being is structured on a much higher turn of the spiral, of course, there is a heart in the head center, which we say a heart, central 12-petaled lotus above the head. Well, that in itself is amazing. And each sign of the zodiac is one of those petals. Each constellation, rather, is one of those petals. Taurus, of course, the second petal. Taurus, its fourth ray energy. Well, we can't say that we know, in fact, that every great constellation has all the rays, of course, and probably a monad and a soul and a personality. We can't speculate what exactly those would be, but for Taurus at the moment, the fourth ray, though quite subjective, is the important ray. And a quality, that quality of light and certain planetary connections. But anyway, this great energy of Taurus goes forth. Maybe it has a connection particularly with the little bear, which might be considered the ajna center of the one about whom naught may be said. And on it moves and on into our local 7 solar systems, of which ours is one, playing the role of heart center. I think we can say that Taurus and Scorpio are very much connected with this 7 solar systems, of which ours is one. Just look in your esoteric astrology book, page 50. And on it goes through our sun, this great illumination. Matter of fact, our solar god is on his way through Taurus and to the Pleiades on the cosmic Buddhic level. Just words for us, but we can hardly understand what systemic intuition is, yet alone cosmic intuition. But on and on, this energy sweeps from the sun then, from our solar logos, taking in Vulcan, as we have seen, taking in Venus, coming to the earth, and certain Kumaras and Ray Lords are the recipients until our monad receives, each one of us, a unit of being, unseparated from any other unit. In Shambhala, these energies reach us. Our monad is in Shambhala. That means that we are in Shambhala, but not consciously so from the lower perspective. And on into the hierarchy of light, where we as souls have our residence upon the triadal planes, and into the personality, bringing will, bringing ajna light, illuminating the personality all the way from those highest sources. Think of it, all the way from sources within the Pleiades, all the way down into our individual life. No separation. We're all bound together in this flow of Taurian energy. Just visualize that for a moment. $410 or something light years away, this particular flow of energy is beginning. And is very potent at this time for members of humanity of Earth. There are many kinds of humanity, but we have our Earth humanity. So we want to live and breathe and have our understanding within the forces of enlightenment now available. And when these Taurian energies reach the earth, what good can they do? How can we use them? We have problems based on lack of light. Can we send the light into those troubled areas of the world, into those troubled groups, those troubled consciousnesses which do not know the light? Can we do that? Perhaps we can do that. And we think for a moment about it. Where would you send the light now? Where would you send the stream of enlightenment available now? Where would you send it? More light for. So let us sound a love wisdom note as we send the light into an area which really needs it. Oh. So, friends, our task is considerable over these next days. Hierarchy itself works from new moon to full moon, and then to new moon, and then to full moon. It takes the whole month, ascending and descending. We don't do so much as that. We can't really. But for 7-day periods, 5-day periods, 3-day periods, and concentrating especially on the moment of the full moon when some kind of door opens for us, he tells us, that is open at no other time. That's how we work. So take it very seriously. And though you may have many things to do and many outer things to take care of, just as we do, keep that inner space in your consciousness open to the energies now uniquely available and use them in the best way possible. So when we close with the great invocation, this meditation, which will be, I think, pretty shortly available on Makara, when we close with it, keep in mind how you can spread it to the world, spread the energies to the world, and help humanity's consciousness really, really benefit from these forces of enlightenment. They are so absolutely needed at this time. There is a counterattack from the forces of glamour and illusion. Any really sensitive person is aware of it now. Part of what's called the fight of materialism to the last ditch, as the Tibetan describes it. And we, as members of the inner group, members hopefully of the new group of world servers, and certainly men and women of goodwill, have to overcome this. Because where the light goes, darkness disappears. And so hang in there. Here we go with the great invocation, the great word of power, which we use particularly to help facilitate the right attitude of humanity for the externalization of the hierarchy and the reappearance of the Christ. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Okay, friends, I want to thank you for this attending this pre-full moon webinar with largely an astrological and ray focus. And in 2 days on Saturday, we'll start the program at 7:30 GMT, Thursday the 18th, and the actual full moon will be at 9, 11, and 14 seconds PM GMT. And then just subtract accordingly, or add according to where you are in the world. I want to thank you very much, and we'll convert this as soon as we can and get it up on Makara for you if you wish to study it or think about it, or have it be part of your preparation. So we all here at the Moria Federation, University Seven Ray Institute, Blue Rose Sisterhood, we all wish you lovely preparation time at a good point of tension and a deep penetration into the intensifying light. Many blessings, lots of love, and see you soon.